Welcome back guys to a top 10 video. Today is top 10 board games for 5 players. The games on this list are all games I've personally played, so the games on this list it means I probably have actually played the game. Now in my opinion, I find most board games these days are made for 4 players. Now this just sort of works for most board games, keeps the size down, the cost down, the complexity down, the downtime between turns down a little bit, it's symmetrical, it's an even player count. So finding games that are good for 5 players is often quite rare. The problem with 5-player or 6, 7, 8-player games is there's a lot of downtime between turns, the game takes a long time to play, and it just draws out the experience quite a lot. So I really enjoy games that can handle this player count and still play really well. So I'll start with a game that's actually a very old game, but rebranded, reprinted, and now done again by Fantasy Flight Games. They did a recent anniversary edition model. It is Cosmic Encounter. So in this game, you basically play as an alien faction. You have a set number of planets and ships on the planets, and you have a large arrow in the centre of the board, along with some cards, attack and defense kind of cards, different abilities. The gameplay is simple. You draw a card top of the deck, and it tells you which player you're going to have an encounter with this turn. Then you have to sort of have a sort of battle of minds and negotiate and get allies to help you and win. And then you've got to sort of trick each other with cards and abilities, play a card and see who wins. This game works because on the surface level, it's quite simple. You basically pick a card, have an encounter with someone. You attack, you get a higher attack, you win. They might play a negotiate card, different kind of cards, do something else. They get certain rewards. The aim of the game is to colonize other planets. Every time you put one of your ships on someone else's planet, you get a little extra point. If it's 1 to 5, wins. Getting allies to help to attack and defend is better for you. If someone helps you attack and you win the encounter, they get put ships on their planets and colonize faster. If someone helps you defend, they get rewards, extra cards and bonuses for defending too. What makes this game really stand out though, apart from the fact that it's relatively simple and the turns go kind of quick, is the fact that the game is really easy, but the alien powers are all broken and bonkers. The game is notoriously unbalanced and ridiculous. The alien powers are all bizarre, and some may seem unfair, and you think, I don't want to play that power, it's just it's too much, it doesn't really, it's not fair for players. But that's what makes Cosmic Encounter so fun. Having these insane powers. I mean, some will say you have the power to win, you have the power to demand something, the power to swap cards with someone. I mean, you can have powers where you bring back your ships instantly from the dead. You have power where you can basically just change what people play in their hands. So it makes the game really uneven and crazy and wacky. But because it's quite a social game, I mean, the mechanics are quite simple. It's only like a few cards and a few tokens. It's more about negotiation. It's about betrayal alliances and coercing each other. It's fun watching 2 players sort of like bicker back and forth and come to an agreement and then see who's telling the truth or not. Often in this game, people spend more time back and forth bickering and offering certain things and saying, oh, I won't do this, I'll do this, I promise you I won't attack you, I promise you I'm going to play this, we'll do this, we'll make an agreement, and then revealing over their true intentions. It makes this game so hilarious and so fun to play. And to be honest, it's such a replayable, fun game. Just the core game alone is full of alien factions, so much replayability, and it's such a good social game. Number 9 is a game by Simon Games. It's a miniature-filled Japanese samurai war area control game. It is Rising Sun. In Rising Sun, you play as one of many unique factions, each warring for control over Japan. In this game, players try and dominate the game board with their troops. They'll move across, they'll recruit more troops, they'll place fortresses down, they'll buy cars, upgrades, and point boosters, they'll buy monsters to help them fight each of your unique abilities, and they'll have a little screen with coins behind them. And the game has a really unique war phase, and that's what makes Rising Sun so great. In the war phase, you have a screen, and behind the screen is a few separate sections for certain things, like hire Ronin, there's a sort of get brute force, there's kill yourself, get victory points. And what happens is you bid down secretly on the certain things you want, and then you reveal the screens at the same time, and the highest bidder left to right goes first. So for instance, you could bid quite high on, say, points per unit killed, but if I bid higher on you on the very first thing, which is the ability to take their own life and gain points, that resolves first. I kill my units and get a lot of points. Now, of course, I don't get control of the land, but I get a lot of points for it, and I might have a card on me that says doing certain things, getting more points, or in certain areas. It's one of the games where it's a war game for sure, and you have a lot of units, troops, and fighting. But it's very strategic. It requires good thinking about the cards and where you want to be, and using your faction's powers to your advantage. What makes this game great also, it's a war game, but it isn't too heavily focused on having like a large army. You can not win so many fights and still win the game. You can get points on your cards and how cleverly you play, so it does reward strategic planning players. Another great thing about this game is the alliance mechanic. What happens is, at the start of each of the rounds, you have a tea party phase, where you and your players can basically form an alliance. And what's great here in a 5-player game is one person can be left out the alliance, which is kind of harsh, I suppose, at first. Of course, when you ally with someone, you get extra benefits when you play certain cards, certain actions, like you recruit extra units, you get more money, you can buy cards for cheaper. You also get to use their abilities, their factions too sometimes. But it makes it fun because when someone has the end of the round, you know, ally again, they don't want to ally with you, they want to ally with someone else instead because they betrayed them last game, or they think, I'm not allying with you this turn because you're nearly winning, I'm going to ally with someone else. So it's a lot of funny dynamics and back and forth this game. It's surprisingly not too hard to understand the basic rules and mechanics. Apart from the war phase, the whole rest of the game is quite simple. It's just an area control game using powers and abilities of your units to gain points based on what region you're in. But at its core, it's a negotiation game. It's another social game. It's about trying to outsmart your opponents with your planning of your money, how you spend, how you use your troops wisely, how you use and control the board and your cards to your advantages. It's also one of 3 games in a trilogy. There's also Bank Gods of Egypt and Blood Rage, which I haven't actually played, which I really should because they're supposed to be really good games too. I chose this game because I love the theme. If you like a sort of Japanese-style samurai war game with mythical monsters, this game is perfect for you. Number 8 is a big game by Leader Games, which make one of my favourite games, Root. This is Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile. And this is kind of like a 4v1 kind of game where everyone's against the Chancellor. One player becomes the Chancellor at the start of the game. They'll have a bit more control of the land, they'll have the gold tile already in their possession, already winning the game, and your job is to overthrow them and take over and fight back. What makes the game so great is, there's so many ways to play, and so many hidden victories, and so many social interactions with each other, and try and like ally and work together, because the thing is, the Chancellor can win quite easily. If they hold onto their title, at the end of the 5th, 6th, 7th round, they can roll a dice and win. So they can win quite easily in the late game. So fighting for dominance early on can kind of win. But the thing that makes the game so great is there's only one winner. So you'll play cards and do things and you'll ally and stuff, but there's also secret goals. And you can draw one and you can keep it secret to yourself and reveal it at the last second. And then you have one more sort of full turn where you can win. So all of a sudden people can think, wow, we've worked together, but now all of a sudden they're the threat, they're the enemy, I've got to stop them. So it's a game with a lot of social interaction and bickering and betrayals and alliances, which I really like in games. I like social conflict in games. I like games where you can have a lot more talking, interacting and planning and, you know, demanding and agreeing on stuff to progress in the game. The mechanics are fairly simple-ish, the cards are a bit confusing, and the campaign action where you basically fight is a bit strange. But I do like an Oath, how if someone is winning, say they have the most sites, you can sort of attack weaker sites with the bandits or other players and gain more sites than them. Sort of, you know, basically betraying your own sort of teammates at the start to get more sites and rule more lands. If they have a sort of banner, which can be one of the secret goals, you can attack the banner if you've got a good army. So your army's not very good though. You can get a lot of money and basically outbid them and buy the banner off them, and then sit back on your area and defend your land. There's just a lot of interesting dynamics in the game, a lot of small conflicts and large-scale open areas, and, you know, getting your troops ready and going on a big rampage of war. It's a very unique game too, with the legacy art aspect where the game ends and sort of remembers what you did. The person who won last game becomes a Chancellor. They begin the next game as a Chancellor and they can do certain things, like they have more, start off with, you know, they'll rule more sites, they'll have more cards out. You can also, as a Chancellor, offer citizenship to players and have them join your team and join forces with you, and they can sort of win together. But it's also, they can also overthrow you, become successor as a Chancellor of a secret sort of way of winning. The game can be quite hard to teach because there's a lot of hidden information, it's quite swingy at times, it's quite complex in certain aspects, especially in the card and what the cards do, what you play to the air, denizen cards. But if you've got a group of friends who like playing regularly and enjoy this game, you're going to get a lot of value from this. You're going to enjoy winning the game, becoming Chancellor, and then the next game starting off ruling the lands or doing something different and changing and growing, and the world deck changes, adapts to what cards you play, and the game's going to feel different every time. The cards are always constantly changing, the sites are constantly changing, the goals constantly changing. It's a game that's always evolving and growing, so it makes the game really unique. Every experience in this game is different. Number 7 is a game by Skybound Games, and we're going to go into Wonderland here because this is Wonderlands War. So this was a surprise hit for me this year. I mean, I like the idea of this game, the theme, the idea of Wonderlands, these characters like Cheshire Cat and the Mad Hatter and Alice, and you're fighting for control of the land, recruiting followers and Wonderlandians and classic characters. and you're doing a sort of bag building mechanic and a push and look thing in the bag, like Quacks, where you reveal tokens and try and fight in certain areas. I wasn't really quite sure how this game would play until I played a 5-player game, and I will admit, despite its length, which was the one thing I did find a bit of a drag, it was quite a long game. I mean, I did spend a bit of time teaching, so you're probably looking at about 2-3 hours roughly. But it was such a fun experience. I mean, the game is in 2 phases, a tea party phase and a war phase. The tea party phase is great. It's sort of like a 3 sort of like pick a card you want around a table. You just pick what you want. You can certain chips you want for your bag, certain allies, you can get them. Certain Wonderlands figures, if it's free, grab them too. Upgrade your character, get stronger, get more abilities, get ready for war, prepare, then send units to certain regions. You also get secret gold cards too, so even though you might want to fight in a region, you might want to win. You might want to end on a certain score for a secret goal too. And what's great is everyone sort of gets involved in the fight too, because it's, like I say again, it's quite a social game about bluffing, about pushing your luck. Can you outbid your opponent with your chips? Can you beat them? And also, if you're not in the fight, you can put wagers down who's going to win. I mean, you don't get a lot, you get an extra chip to your bag, but just help out a little bit. But it makes you feel more involved in the game. Unlike writing somewhere, if you're not involved in a war phase, you're sort of out of the game. In this, if you aren't involved in a battle, you are still involved because you kind of want someone to win, because you can put bids down and wager on who's going to win. The game works for me well because despite its complexity at first, it's quite a simple bag building game. And the war phase and these unique powers of the units and how you can build your bag and all the replay value and how the units can change and allyships can change and different variations of cards and abilities and end game scoring goals. It's just a really in-depth strategic game that really surprised me. If you're a fan of Alice in Wonderland, you like big war games, you like negotiation games, you like bag building games, it's the perfect game for you and your game group. Number 6 is Tapestry by Stonemaier Games. Now this is a civilization building game with painting miniatures. Essentially you become a civilization and go through the eras, basically playing cards, but placing buildings, upgrading your resources, getting like an engine building mechanic, getting more resources in to place more stuff out. You use one of 4 tracks to advance, get rewards. Each of the tracks has a different theme, like military, technology, exploration and science. Each one has gradually increasing rewards as you progress. One of the criticisms with this game is it doesn't really feel very thematic. It's not like a proper civilization game. It doesn't look like you're building a town and growing your civilization. I mean, you do have a civilization, you do play certain era cards, you do build a small town with miniatures and little buildings and stuff, but it doesn't really feel like that. You feel like you just try and get the most points and the most, unlockable things on your player board and build your resources faster and engine building faster. But that doesn't mean this isn't a good game. It's actually a really fun game. Despite how it looks, I mean, there's so many symbols and miniatures and cards and there's so many icons on the board, icons everywhere. But as soon as you start to learn what some of the icons mean and understand how you gain points, the game plays super smoothly. All you do in your turn is basically spend a resource and advance one of the 4 tracks. Military, for instance, will let you place outposts down and grow across the board and spread. You'll roll dice, get more rewards, and you'll be a bigger sort of presence on the game board. Exploration allows you to get tiles to place face up and gain rewards and spread out more and have the options to go in certain areas across the game board. The tech track allows you to gain tech cards, which lets you get rewards as you upgrade them. You can get resources, you can gain different points, you can gain tiles, and you can also gain miniatures with them as well. And the science track is like a sort of risky reward kind of thing. You roll a dice to get a random track bonus and extra rewards. Along the way, you'll gain more resources, you'll play civilization cards, do certain abilities, you'll place your abilities down to a lot more resources, more points, and the game starts off quite slow and quite simple, but as you get further into the game and you get more abilities and more unlockable resources, you expand and you get bigger and bigger. This works well for 5 players because the turns are quite quick. It's basically you do one small action then pass around. The game goes quite quickly, and because as well you have 2 types of turns, you have a basic advancement turn and an income turn. People can do an income turn before you, so they can sort of end their own personal round before you and then carry on playing. So the game never really feels slow, it doesn't really drag down and bog down, it's sort of constantly moving, constantly flowing. There isn't really that much interaction apart from with the game board and a few trap cards. But other than that, it's a really good engine building kind of civilization game. I did mention before it's very light on the theme, but like I say, it's not a bad game. It's very, very fun. It plays quite nice. It's not too hard to understand. Pre-painted miniatures are great. Placing your buildings down, your little town, and growing your little town bigger and bigger. It feels nice. It kind of feels nice to watch your town grow and expand and get more rewards. It's just a really satisfying experience to increase your board and get more rewards and placing buildings down and get more resource next turn, get more points next turn. That's going to be fun. And there's so many technology cards, there's so many civilization cards, there's so many era cards too. Each civilization has unique powers and abilities. They all play very differently. There's a lot of replay value for this game. If you want something that's like a civilization game and a bit of resource management, engine building, but not too heavy for 5 players, want something that plays not too, it's not too long-winded and it plays quite fast, then Tapestry is the game for you. Number 5 is a game by Stronghold Games. It is Terraforming Mars. Now, like Tapestry, this is an engine building game, and the goal of the game here is to terraform Mars by doing 3 parameters: oxygen, air, and water. Once all those 3 are done, the game has a sort of last round and the game ends. And whoever has a high score wins. This game is great for me because, like Tapestry, the turns are quite fast. You do 1 action per turn and go round. And because you're all sort of terraforming the same area and just growing your board and getting more resources and rewards, the game has a sort of great flow to it too. There's not much downtime, there's not much in between turns. It doesn't take too long to play. It plays kind of smoothly, plays quite fast. It's not too complex either to understand. The main actions are quite simple. You just spend a resource to gain a certain reward. If you increase one of the parameters, you gain victory points. If you get a little brown tick box in one of the rewards, you increase your production. At the end of the round, everyone's passed. You gain a new round, you gain new resources and more resources. Your engine grows bigger. And then you've got more resources. You can do more things. You can play more cards. That card earlier that was too expensive, you can play it now. And you can combos with this card and affects this card too. There's a lot of iconography, a lot of symbols. Blue cards stick around and use every turn. Green cards, the symbols will be used later on for certain abilities. And red cards, like big effect cards, that do a big reward but cost a lot of money. The game is great too because you have unique factions to play with, have different powers. You also have a large stack of cards, so many cards to choose from and certain ways to victory. It's great too because it's also a semi-cooperative game. You are working together to terraform Mars, but there can only be one winner. It's one of those games too where an expansion here and there does really help boost this game up. I mean, especially the Prelude expansion. The Prelude one is almost essential. Basically, you get a few extra cards, and you get these Prelude cards that give you a slight boost to your economy or certain income in the early game. It allows the game to start off a little bit faster. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it for your very first game, but after a few plays, you want to use Prelude. That's all you're going to use the rest of the game now because it just makes the game much more fun, much more faster. It flows better, it starts off a lot quicker, you get resources quicker, and you can build and terraform and spread out more. There's a lot of ways to gain points, a lot of ways to increase your resources and your engine building skills. And it's just a lot of cards, a lot of replay value. And it's just a nice little package game that's not too much of a table hog, plays quite fast, and not much downtime too. For number 4, we head to Westeros for Game of Thrones, the board game by Fantasy Flight Games. This is a really, really thematic game, very immersive and area control war game. This is one of the most thematic, immersive games based on an IP that I've ever seen. This really does feel like Game of Thrones, but transported into a board game world. The map of Westeros is great, all the locations, how each faction's got their own units starting in certain areas across the board, how you can gain armies and spread out, but watch your supply lines and gain cards and place strongholds and then muster troops. How you have the war phase, how you can have alliances, betrayals and negotiate certain things. And also the wildling attacks too, you have to come together and try to defend from the wildlings, they're going to take you over. One of the best things about this game is how the turns are played. You use basically face-down tokens in your areas you control to determine what action you're going to take. So tokens do certain things like march, raid, defend, consolidate power. But the great thing is, these are all placed face down, and they're all revealed at the same time face up with everyone else. So what's funny is you can be quite close to someone else, and you can say, I'm not going to attack you, let's work together, let's take out this guy here. But the thing is, though, when you've got a face down token, no one knows what token is. You can flip it over, it could be a raid token, they could destroy you, they could be a march, they could march on you. So it's really great how they got this betrayal mechanic and this, quick attack and quick, cutthroat style gameplay. There's these little tokens being put out. There's also great too, is you have sort of 3 tracks that determine the rule of certain things. Like one lets you basically have higher priority on certain things, rule tiebreakers, extra combat and war. One lets you basically replace tokens that have been revealed, just in case. It's a game about building up your armies, controlling the area, being strategic, planning your attacks. Do you want to go by sea? Do you want to fortify a region? Do you want to think, right, let's go for this area here? It's like really looking at the map and thinking, right, where can I defend down here? For instance, I played a game where I was the Starks and the Greyjoys, as you know, start kind of close to the Starks on the map. I was going for an attack on King's Landing, and the Greyjoys were quite close to me. And I thought they were my friends and they were alive with me, but at last second they raided me, attacked me, and threw me from behind and took over King's Landing. And it's very thematic, it's very like the show. And also King's Landing is very fortified, very protected, so attacking there is quite vital to get the resources you need. You got to spread out though to get resources and expand and place castles and get more units. The game wins when you place 7 strongholds or castles, but I do like how you can muster and gain units. Do you want to get more troops? Go out faster. Do you want to get stronger troops like knights? Do you want to use sort of catapults for the siege units for the castles? Do you want to use boats and transport and do a sea attack? It's even funny too in the wildling attacks. When wildling attacks, you all stop and you've got to come together and spend power, like your sort of currency, and stop them. So say the wildling was on, like I say, right, we need to all come together and spend 10 power in total to defend this wildling attack. We'll go, okay, I'll put 5 in. Okay, I'll put 3 in, I'll put 2. But you could say, okay, I'll put this much in. But you don't have to. You can just show what you put in. You can put nothing if you want to. This game's so great, you betray everyone, you screw them over, you get more power than them. It's also a great game of social gameplay. The game does go quite long, it's quite a long-winded game. Depending on how well you're playing, how well you're growing certain units, you can play up to 6 players too. But the game does feel like it was made for higher player counts. It does play better at higher player counts because you've got more spread of the land. There's only 3 or 4 of you, the game's quite spaced out and you're going to move slower. And the conflicts come a lot later. But for 5 or 6 players, the conflicts start a lot sooner because you're all closer. So having a high player count makes this game much more brutal, much more engaging, and much more fun. Number 3 is another Stonemaier game. It is Scythe. This is a game set in a sort of dystopian, Eastern European world with large tank-like units and mechs. You've got to use your forces to go stronger, gain resources, place buildings, place mechs. There's a lot of ways to get certain victory points. There's a lot of ways to sort of play out combat. And there's a lot of ways to play. And what's like Game of Thrones is everyone starts in their own little region, but you're all going to spread out. The more you spread, the more you could collide and combine together. The game is a war game, but you haven't got to be war hungry to win. You can do different ways of winning. You can basically have secret objectives. You can basically build faster, get more workers out. You can be popular, get more money. Basically, the more money you have, the more popular you are, more billions you spread out, the more points you're going to get into the game. So it's a game where you can be both equally brutal and war hungry, and also quite reserved and quite defensive, and still get a good score and maybe win. I do like Scythe's player boards, how you have sort of 2 top and bottom actions, and basically you just move a cube across and do certain things like place units down, build mechs, build buildings, or basically increase popularity or increase your combat power. And also combat's quite great too. You basically move your forces in, but you also have a sort of secret dial and you have a sort of combat card. So say your power was 10, but you don't use all that, you want to use 5 and you've got a 5 card too. They could have 10, they could put quite a high number but no power card, or a low power card, sorry, combat card. It makes the combat quite fluid and fast. And because, much like the other game on this list, Tapestry, the actions are sort of one straight thing: build a mech, move units, gather resources, recruit workers. The game flows very, very quickly. So for a 5-player game, it plays quite fast. Also, each faction has a unique power, unique ways to set up the board. There's also the factory cards that give you extra upgrades. There's all the objective cards too, and the encounter cards for certain rewards. It's just a really fun area control game for 5 players. Number 2 is a co-op game now. It is Eldritch Horror by Fantasy Flight Games. Now, I know what you're thinking, it's a very different game for this list. I know it is, but it's actually a really fun game because you're all working together to do one goal. Stop the Ancient One from waking up, defeat it to save the day. You have a big map of the world, you have certain characters, certain abilities, you'll collect items, you'll go across the board collecting clues, increasing your stats, having crazy encounters and getting rewards and penalties. Along the way, there's this looming threat of the Ancient One waking up. There's some mythos cards that make monsters spawn, gates appear, strange things happen, it becomes increasingly tense. But Sun describes the game to me as a game where you're balancing a plate, and all of a sudden you're going to balance more and more and more and more, and the game becomes like a juggling effect where you're all trying to do things together. But the more players you have, the more fun the game is. Yes, it's harder because you have to put more enemies out and more gates and more damage on certain things to kill certain things. But because you can spread out more and each player can do certain things to help the game progress, it makes the game's co-op elements really shine. You can work together really well. You can say, right, you gain clues, you kill monsters, you do this encounter, you solve this puzzle, you've got better stats than me. No, you do this, you got more of this. That item there is better for you for this. Have this item, let's have you kill this thing. You got better stats than me, you try this out. So there's a lot of ways to sort of work together, and it forces cooperation, and players sort of use their heads and plan and rely on each other to do certain things and work together very, very well. It's one of those games where the co-op elements really shine through, and the sort of sandbox style narrative makes these little fun stories happen, like, oh, I got lost in space down there, or I got stuck fighting a Wendigo in Tokyo, I got stuck in London trying to solve a puzzle. It's like, oh, I'm in this theatre in San Francisco trying to solve this mad clue or something. There's so many funny stories that come from the game, and so much fun to bring back from playing this game that makes the experience so enjoyable. Because of the extra ancient ones and all the expansions and investigators and tons of cards and assets and spells, the game is very replayable, and every single game will feel different every time you play. Number one for this list is Dune. Not Dune Imperium, but the 2019 Gale Force 9's version of Dune for 2 to 6 players. Now, much like Cosmic Encounter, this is based on a very, very old game. I think from the 70s, I think it was, 1970 something. And then just redone, reprinted, and then they had this new version in 2019. And the core elements are quite the same. The game basically has you play as one of the factions in the Dune universe. You each have sort of unique powers and abilities. You start off in certain areas of the map, and the aim of the game is to control so many regions, much like Game of Thrones. The game starts off with your already known cards, so when the cards are all face down too, so you know what you're going to get. You might get nothing, you might get something really good, who knows. But what's great is House Atreides here has a power where you can look at the cards, note them down, put them back down, and then they can use that information to sort of barter and sell. They could be like, oh, if you want to know what card's good, I'll tell you. It's going to cost you though. And the game doesn't encourage that kind of behaviour. The game doesn't encourage bartering and allying and bribing negotiations, which I do really, really like. And you'll spend turns gathering your units, place them down, move across the board. And then you'll have sort of fights in certain areas. And the fighting is really great too, because much like Scythe, have a small combat wheel and certain cards. Now, some of these cards are overpowered. Some of these weapons will instantly kill the leader and make you win. What's great is, though, after that happens, that information becomes public. And we all know what you've got now, so we all know what to be like around you and how to fight you and what you've got to use. The game shines though with its powers though. Each faction works so well. House Harkonnen can have more traitors. What's really great is in a battle, when you play someone, you have to place a leader down. And if you've got one of their traitor cards in your hand, you can just shout out, traitor, play it down and instantly win. Because House Harkonnen has so many, they become quite a force to reckon with. Some factions move faster in the sand, some factions can deploy easier, some factions gain money in the bidding phase a lot easier. Some factions control the storm that goes around the board and wrecks things. You can have the storm come across, wipe out all your units if you aren't careful. So if you've got units out in the open, the storm can come around, end the round, and just destroy you. Also got the sandworm can appear and devour you. But when this happens though, it triggers a Nexus event where you can form an alliance. What's great is with 3 players though, you can have two alliances, you can have a 3 alliance, you can have a 3 alliance and a 2 alliance. The goal is to change your units to control more strongholds, but it makes it more fun though because you can combine together. You can say, right, we'll team up, just do that one stronghold down there. And what's great is as well is when the Nexus phasing happens again, you can break the alliance, but only at that point. So you can be friendly all you want, and then at the last second you can break the alliance, kick them out your stronghold, and win the game. It's like a large game of chess or Risk. It's very strategic. It requires a lot of thinking and planning. The gameplay itself is kind of simple. It's not too hard to understand once you learn the powers. There are basic and advanced rules from experienced players too, so that's really good there. I do appreciate that. But the game is a fast-paced, quick game that turns out quite quick, combat's quite quick. It can end suddenly quite fast, so it can go on quite long depending on what kind of playstyle you're going for. The game can also end quite quickly because it can go on quite a long time depending on what kind of players you're playing with. The game shines here though because of its unique faction powers, its fun area control and combat mechanics. But the game rewards players who can understand their factions, manage their resources well, pick their points to strike quite well, get the right cards and handle combat. It's all in all a really good package. It's a cheap game, you can handle 6 players, it sets up quite fast, it plays relatively quick, the turns go relatively smoothly and quickly, not too hard to learn, kind of a bit long-winded at times, but it's just a great experience. If you're a fan of the universe, the Frank Herbert universe, if you like sci-fi games, if you like war games, if you like area control games, if you like negotiation, alliances, social kind of games, then Dune is a perfect 5-player game for you. And that is it, this top 10 list. Hope you enjoyed this. Any comments or questions, any suggestions, comment down below. As always, like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.